Okay, welcome back to the third video for the class game. So we're going to have a look just after the second refrain here, where we've got those juxtapositions of contrast between the working class, how the working class live, and also the middle and upper class. So in this section here, we've got two contrasts. The first contrast that we've got is between, in fact, I'll just label them at the side, about housing and about work. Now in the previous one, it was about clothes and speech, so I might just note those. It was clothes and speech. I'm using my imagery colour just because these are the key images that are juxtaposed throughout this entire poem, so it just reminds me that they're the core images that are used and contrasted. So let's have a look at the colloquial language that is used here on line 9. So I'll use my vocab colour. So cause, we've got, instead of because, colloquially, we live in a corpy. So a corpy is slang for a council estate or a council house. And again, this overuse almost or intentional use of colloquialisms and dialect and phonetic language is all encompassing that tone of pride. So it's colloquial language, and I'm going to use my tone colour to just put this is all about pride. Okay, because we live in a corpy, not like some. And look at the overuse here and of adjective use in a pretty little semi. So notice how, and again, it's interesting, isn't it, that she chooses to not include any adjectives at all here in her representation of the way she lives. But there's almost this kind of stereotype here in the adjectives in a pretty little semi. So we've got the adjective use, almost as if this way of living is set up as being better than her way. And you could read this in a couple of different ways. Is it patronising? It's a pretty little semi. Or is it, this is set up as like the ideal way of living or preferred. These are the winners of the class game, essentially. So you could put a couple of different interpretations there. So I might just note down that these might be considered the winners. This is preferable. Or desired. Or it could be sarcastic. Either way, it's interesting that the choice has been not to include adjective here, but to do it here. Okay, and then what you'll notice here is that we get the rhyming couplets that I talked about in the very first video, not used all the way throughout, so structure colour needed here. And look at what it's emphasising here. Out in Wirral Way and commuting to Liverpool by train each day. Or did I drop my unemployment card? Sitting on your patio, we have a yard. And what she's doing by choosing to use the rhyming couplets here is to emphasise the accent in the way that a Liverpudlian would use the A sound. I don't want to embarrass myself, but let's just see if you can hear it. Wirral Way, each day, employment card, have a yard. So she's purposely emphasising that sound through the assonance of the A, used that same way. So rhyming couplet, we've got that assonance, which is a repetition of a vowel sound, but very specifically heightens the dialect. And again, it all links to this idea of defiance and pride, and I'm happy with where I come from. And it's heightening the accent. Okay. And if we go back to so this was obviously structure, but if we go back and look at the imagery that is used here, you can see that she's obviously talked about housing, but in this bit here, we get the contrast that is set up between working and not. So, and commuting to Liverpool by train each day. So middle and upper class people being able to pay for a train, being able to go to work, or did I drop my unemployment card? So we've got this juxtaposition. No, I don't want to use that colour really. We've got this juxtaposition remember that just means next to, of working and not working, almost as if they're like the game, like that title, set up against each other, like which one's better and which one's worse, and that's how she feels, that she's being set up as like kind of the loser because she doesn't, this isn't a standard way of living for her. And there's obviously this stereotype here as well of working class people being unemployed and struggling. And then in this last bit within this section here, we go back to housing. So almost as if it's the effect of having a job, not having a job, and the difference between a council estate, a corpy, and a semi-detached house here. Sitting on your patio, we have a yard. And again, we've got this contrast between a patio, which seems quite like luxurious, somewhere you want to be, somewhere calming, something beautiful, something designed, something expensive, in contrast to the yard, which sounds quite functional, and again it's setting up the working class and the middle and upper class. And I don't know whether you could read into maybe a little bit of like sadness here, almost like something is being denied, even through language, which for me is why English is so important, because through our language we communicate stereotypes and we can make people feel really good or we can make people feel really sad. And I think here the use of language it is purposely dictating almost a divide, a class. So a patio and a yard essentially are, you know, the space around your home. But the use of the language has different inferences, and a yard is something quite functional, something that can be seen as quite bare, quite empty, nothing in it, quite concrete, whereas a patio seems to conjure up a lot more images of something being quite, you know, money has been spent on it to have nice plants and garden furniture and things like that. But again, you can see how you want to read into that. I think you definitely go back to the fact that she's being quite defiant, that pride is there. She's quite proud of that, and who she is. Okay, so I'm going to pause it there, and there'll be one last video to have a look at the very last section.